This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
Okay, so in an attempt to swoop my way back into the Warframe's YouTube algorithm, I am once again back doing a 8-hour level cap survival with some of the Warframe's latest content. This time, instead of Kome, we're tackling Valkyr's rework because it's a hot topic right now on whether or not Valkyr is still good for all forms of content, including level cap stuff, of course. And let me quickly address Void Cascade level cap, which is what most of you guys will be commonly doing when you go to such content, is different to going 8 hours and slaving away in a survival. And no, this is not something I do regularly. I just think it's more fun and you guys seem to really enjoy it, so that's why we're doing it. Is Valkyr maybe a little bit worse for doing Void Cascade? Sure, but there's ways to work around it, because even in today's content, I went into the survival without an optimized build for the occasion and came out of it pretty unscathed for the most part. Seriously, I think the new Valkyr is more than capable of going level cap, and the gameplay proves that. Let's talk about the main difference in what's either easier or worse when it comes to going high level with this frame. Instead of now pressing 4 and being immortal with the cost of maybe some energy issues, she now just gains a large increase to her armor bonus from Warcry when entering her 4th skill, and your main form of survivability is actually going to come from your passive. You have a melee damage meter, which you build up doing melee damage up to a total of 300% bonus, and the split down the middle of this meter is the gauge for your health gate, invulnerability gate, whatever you want to call it. If you're at the 150% mark on this meter, you will, instead of dying, go invulnerable for 5 seconds. This has no cooldown, so as long as you melee enough enemies during those 5 seconds, it can trigger again. The best way to constantly activate this and keep this up at level cap is to build for a lot of range either on your talons or your melee weapon. My talons were easily capable of keeping this up, just spamming slide attacks from room to room, and more importantly using the grouping of her reworked first ability. Seriously, the grouping on a rip line is exceptional right now, but you could also go with the alternative of using prolonged paralysis, the augment for a 3rd skill, which also gives you grouping. That's another thing, I went to this run with a non-helmet build to prove a point. I mean, I didn't know how good it was going to be, but yes, her base kit is very strong. And the only points in the survival in which I died or had to overcome any sort of adversity was when an acolyte showed up and shut off my skills. But this is actually way more effective than it used to be, because in the past you would have your 4th ability shut off and you wouldn't be invincible anymore and you would just die. But because your invulnerability is now tied to your passive, this won't kill you unless you are incapable of building up your melee meter in time, because your melee weapon is also what's going to build up that meter, not just your talons. In the run, I took my pretty good Techo Prime. It has a ribbon on it that gives some nice stats, but unfortunately its negative stat is range, and fist weapons already have low range, so as you can imagine, hitting enemies and building up this meter was pretty sketchy, and it got me killed a few times whenever my 4th skill was shut off. So if I had simply brought a polearm with a lot of range to the mission, I would have been able to keep up my passive regardless of whether or not my 4th ability was active. So a very good rangy polearm is a good option, but also the new melee weapon, the Thalus, the Incarnon Scythe. I know that thing has a lot of range with its Incarnon evolution, so maybe that's worth checking out. But yeah, if you want to stay alive with the passive alone, just bring a really strong melee weapon that has a lot of range. Because as far as I can tell, the hits from melee influence doesn't contribute towards your melee meter. And when in your 4th skill, just using melee talons with the grouping of either your 1st or your 3rd skill with its augment is going to be enough to keep you over that threshold of 150%, and you'll constantly go invulnerable without even needing shield gating. But speaking of shield gating, in something like a Void Cascade, you're probably better off going with a shield regen build, Arcane Aegis, Fast Deflection, Redirection, Brief Respite, you guys get the idea. And because of her increased melee damage, and the fact that she can also debuff enemies with her 3rd skill, means you don't have to build for as much damage anymore in regards to both your build and your arcanes. So you could drop off a different arcane and reduce your strength overall, it's not going to hurt you too bad, and instead you can throw in those shield regen mods. But in this run, something that I could have done with the build, I was using Equilibrium and then Synth Deconstruct to my companion for energy sustain, but because I was constantly getting my health chew through in those high levels, using something like Rage or Hunter's Adrenaline to keep my energy up would probably have been a better option. So health tanking even at high levels is actually very useful purely based on energy. Okay, so I should probably also go over her other abilities just in general since the rework, in case anyone is unfamiliar. Ripline is way better at being more of a Spider-Man skill now. If anything, it's probably better than Araxia's wall latching. The mobility you get from this is great, it can really allow you to close distance fast, and it groups enemies very well. Even at high high levels when there's a lot of Xmas around, you're still going to be pulling in a decent amount of enemies. I really like this skill, but it isn't mandatory to keep on the build. Definitely a sub-zoom slot option. A second skill, Warcry, is still good. It's now recastable and you can cast it whilst you're moving. Its base duration's also been increased, and the armor bonus that you get from this skill also triples in your ult. I was still using her Augment Eternal War for this because I just think it's incredibly convenient, but it isn't as needed anymore if you're okay with recasting, but I still like using it. Her third skill, Paralysis, is also probably still considered a subsumable slot, but it's actually quite useful the higher level you get. It's recastable, doesn't cost shield to cast anymore, only energy. Gives you melee debuff on enemies, meaning they're all more vulnerable to melee damage, slows them down, and it's just a solid debuff tool. And because of its augment allowing you to pull in enemies, you could just subsume off your first skill for the grouping and use the grouping of the augment on this skill, once again giving you a versatile way of modding. In the run, this was mainly coming in useful whenever an Xmas enemy was rolling around and maybe tanking a few of my heavy attack hits. Valkyr's talons are so strong anyway, this is pretty rare, but on the occasion where an Xmas is tanking, just debuff them with your third skill and they'll die instantly. And for Hysteria, her fourth and final skill, of course it makes you way more tanky with a large armor increase from your Warcry, tripling that value overall. If you're curious on how long this was actually health tanking for, I was able to take a decent amount of hits, even upwards of level 3000, which the average Warframe player is not even going to be going to on a regular basis. Due to the changes to her regular armor values and the combination of Warcry and Hysteria, Valkyr is probably the tankiest health tank in the game, competing with that of something like Chroma. She's also completely status immune in S4 as well, meaning you don't have to run Prime sure-footed at all. The energy drain no longer increases, meaning it's way easier to sustain now. And of course, because you're taking damage in the ult, you can use Hunter's Adrenaline as Rage, as we already mentioned. I think my favourite change to the skill was the differences made to her combos. The Valkyr Prime Talons now force proc slash on a lot of the combos and have way better multipliers across the board, meaning that if you want that 300% multiplier from the slide attack, you also get it from some other combos, so you don't have to spam slide everywhere. However, I will say this, the best way to murk squads quickly with Valkyr is still to just mash slide attack. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, just because her regular combos and her grouping is now a really good combination. Sliding from room to room with your Warcry active is still a much faster way of killing things. At some points during this run, whenever my energy was getting a bit low, the best counter was to just spam slide attacks. It's the best way of keeping up life support and energy because it's the fastest form of DPS on the character. But now just playing her normally and meleeing and using her other skills is actually way more viable, which is nice. As for the new ways in which I was building, as I said in this run, I wasn't even optimizing it. I just sort of threw this together because I thought, oh, this will be good for the rework, and yep, it works. Health tanking, if you're going to use it for something like level cap and make use of Hunter's Adrenaline and Rage, is a good option. And because of our high armor values both in and out of Warcry and Hysteria, you can make use of Arcane Battery. If you're going to go Void Cascade, I recommend a shield regen build. It's just going to keep you way more safe from room to room, especially if you're not keeping Hysteria active, and of course the amount of time you'll probably spend priming enemies as well. But here's some optimizations that I would have made to my build in the run. First off, I was using Naramon, which was completely irrelevant. I was mainly using it to keep my combo up permanently, but this Warframe is so good at instantly building combo that even if you miss a window of your Tennokai and accidentally deplete your meter, you can instantly build up your combo back straight away just from using the grouping of either your first or third skill with this augment, and then mashing your Valkyr Prime Talons, and within a few seconds you're going to be max at 12x combo. So maybe just use a Dexterity Arcane for this. Instead, I'd use Madurai and benefit from the strength and casting speed, and it would also make my last gasp stronger if I ever needed to use it. Then for the build, a way to make it more versatile, you could replace Equilibrium for Hunter's Adrenaline or Rage. Eternal War is also not mandatory, you could use Prolonged Paralysis. I was also using 0 Archon Shards on this build, meaning that any value you want to replace can be done via shards. Maybe you don't want to run Arcane Battery and just go for 3 Energy Max Shards instead. You could throw in Casting Speed to help with the speed of your 3. And maybe in that slot in which you've dropped Arcane Battery, you could throw on more Augmented for more strength, and then replace one of the strength mods with something else. See what I'm saying? There's a bunch of different ways you can go about modding, and it's all going to work. And then for the Valkyr Prime Talons, and of course your melee weapon, building for primed reach and any other range mod you want to fit in. That's probably the most optimal way to stay alive, because if you're hitting enemies directly with the melee, the more enemies you're hitting at once in a wide range is going to build up that meter instantly. But yeah, I'd say Prime Reach is a must. And you don't need melee influence. The melee influence hits aren't going to contribute to that meter like I said, but other arcanes are also really strong on this thing. Melee influence is just the best for overall damage. Like, it's Valkyr we're talking about. She already didn't need to run influence, she does so much damage at base. So the melee arcane slot is very flexible. So my personal verdict for the Valkyr rework is that, in my opinion, she's better in almost every way. She's overall less lazy and now requires you to be a bit more switched on in the gameplay, but I think that's pretty good for Warframe overall and it makes the gameplay more fun. I think the grouping from her rip line is exceptional, the melee debuffing from her paralysis is actually way better than I thought. I do think Eternal War is more of my playstyle still. I like the fact that I have to recast it over and over, but it is now much more of an optional augment, and I think her health tanking in Hysteria is way more effective than I thought it was going to be. You can easily health tank up to the levels in the thousands, she's not as squishy as everyone's saying, and once you start getting one shot, you're good to go with your passive. And the multiplier changes to your combos on the talons, as well as the force proc slash is so satisfying. I'm not a Valkyr main, but if I was, I would personally be happy with this rework, because as it stands right now, I'm pretty stoked on it. I'm definitely going to be playing her more going forward because I think she's less one-dimensional than she was before, and there's not many frames who you can go to level cap with in either a Void Cascade or a Survival, and especially in a Survival without shield gating mods. I think that's pretty impressive. Not the feat of me doing it, this isn't impressive at all, I just mean for the Warframe. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We did try to do this level cap thing in a Survival with Corvex recently with his augment, but I was having PC crashing issues. Those have since seemingly been fixed, so maybe if you guys want to see me do this on occasion every now and again with some new content, maybe a Warframe that's been released or some Warframe rework, if you guys want to see me go to level cap in a Survival every now and again, let me know, because the Warframe YouTube algorithm seemed to like it last time and I'm hoping the same thing takes place this time. If you did enjoy the content, feel free to like and subscribe. If not, then no worries, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.